Late at night, a truck driver stops near the woods to relieve himself. At that moment, van parks nearby and Edith comes out, but she disappears when the driver turns around. On his way back, the man hears a noise and notices Walter trying to escape from the van. Before he can react, Edith smashes his head on the van and drops him before feeding on him. When another truck parks nearby and illuminates the area, Edith breaks the driver's neck to kill him and hides the body in the van. Walter then finally manages to break his ropes, but when he's about to escape, Edith drags him back and injects him with a sedative. The next morning, Edith sneaks onto a fancy cruise by driving her van among the vehicles that are boarding the ship. Then she gets on the elevator, where a little girl notices her suitcase is shaking. On the way to the bedroom, Edith is seen by Albine, who also notices the suitcase moving. When Edith discovers that Albine is staring, she immediately closes the door. Afterward, she opens the suitcase, revealing a bound Walter inside. He wakes up and is unhappy to hear they're going to Finland. Edith is about to sedate him again, but Walter begs for mercy and promises to behave. Edith agrees to keep him awake but muzzles him before leaving to get some food. As soon as Edith is gone, Walter begins untying the ropes. Meanwhile, performer Dan is trying to get naughty with a fan, but instead of spurting his seed, his member discharges blood. His shame makes him angry, so he yells at the fan to kick her out. Security guard Pia hears the yelling and comes to check on the poor woman, but Dan assures her everything is fine, her shirt, so she goes to the bathroom to wash up. Edith follows her again, but when she's about to attack, Goran comes in and helps Marianne get the stain off. They end up leaving together, and Edith sighs as she stares at her locket. In the meantime, Tompa leaves his bachelor party to clear his head. When he hears a child's voice asking for help, he follows the noise and finds Walter hiding behind the bed. Tompa immediately grabs the phone to call security, only to hear growling behind him. Suddenly Walter jumps on him and they struggle until they both fall to the floor. When Tompa checks if the boy is okay, Walter smiles with creepy teeth, confirming that he and his mother are vampires. Walter tackles Tompa and proceeds to suck his blood. Once he's fed, Walter watches Tompa slowly die, then he kicks the body. Suddenly Tompa wakes up and spits all his teeth, since new sharper ones are growing. Tompa is now a vampire too, but he's a mindless beast. Walter takes his hand and tells him he must eat. In the corridor, a drunk woman accidentally drops her card key. Edith picks it up and offers to help her return to her room, which is seen creepy expression. Suddenly he's startled by Tompa, who brings him down and starts feeding on him. Walter has to stop him from taking too much and ignores Tompa's growl to force him to leave with him. In the room, Albine and Lo are watching a movie. They're interrupted by Albine's father Martin, who is drunk again. He thinks his family is ashamed of him and maybe he should self-delete. Lo ends up arguing with him and Martin points out she doesn't even have a father, so she leaves. After Martin falls asleep, Albine also leaves the room and finds Lo on the deck. Their chat is interrupted by a weird noise, so Lo turns around to discover the body Tompa left earlier. She takes a picture and posts it online, thinking it's just a drunkard. After the duo leaves, the man finishes transforming into a vampire. Meanwhile, Kaye follows Vince and apologizes for his reaction. He explains he used to work on this cruise but he hated it, so he doesn't want to get married here. Most importantly, Vince wants children and Kaye doesn't, so he can't accept his proposal. After Vince walks off, Kaye goes to the bar to drown his sorrows in alcohol. Dan also drinks and takes his illegal substance backstage. Then he introduces himself before getting on the stage to sing, but not everyone is impressed. He also has to host the karaoke night, and he drinks while the guests sing. Pia approaches him to inform him that the captain wants a urine sample. At the same time, away. At that moment Edith arrives and sees Walter, who immediately runs away. Edith follows him to the deck and reminds him that the elders are already hunting them for what he did, so they can't keep breaking the rules. Walter refuses to obey and points out that vampirism is already spreading, showing her the teeth on the floor before running again. Edith chases Walter through the corridors and insists they should work together. Walter is tired of the old rules, so Edith pulls out the sedative. Before she can attack him, Walter yells for help and two guests come to his aid, so Edith runs away. On the deck, Goran and Marianne almost kiss. Goran wants to spend the night together, but Marianne panics and leaves alone. After locking Tompa up, Pia and Boss are called to check on Walter and conclude he's the missing child that the receptionist mentioned. Walter acts like an innocent kid and tells Pia that his mother was always mean to him. When Pia turns around to organize a vampire instead of a mindless beast. Then Walter opens the bathroom and reveals the wounded mascot. Dan immediately jumps on him to feed. Afterward Walter tells Dan that he's 143 years old and shows him that their wounds have already healed. Their bodies will heal almost everything and never age, they only need blood. Dan wonders if they're vampires, but Walter dislikes the word because the myth is wrong. They aren't affected by crosses, stakes, or sunlight. The ancients have rules they're supposed to follow, but Walter is tired of it and wants to be respected. Dan also wants that, so they agree to work together. Meanwhile Tompa's victim is approaching a crowd and Lo sees him, so she takes a picture. Before he can attack, Edith finds him and takes him away. In an empty area, Edith kills the guy and throws him into the sea. In the men's bathroom, Edith finds another bitten guy in a stall, finds Marianne, and they end up talking about their bad luck with love. They go to the bar to keep chatting over a drink, and Vince convinces Marianne that she needs to leave shame behind and enjoy life. When Goran arrives, Vince quickly leaves them alone. Vince apologizes for moving too fast and Marianne is ready to try again. In the bathroom, Vince gets a call from Kaye, but he ignores it. A frustrated Kaye goes to their room and is devastated to discover the surprise Vince had prepared for him. In the meantime, Lo and Albine watch the video of Dan online and they notice Edith looking at him. Getting suspicious, Albine takes Lo to the room where he saw Edith earlier and they knock on the door, but nobody comes out. At that moment Martin wakes up and looks for his son, so the kids run away. In the corridor, Maddie hears a scream, so she rushes to the front desk to report what happened. Boss and Pia are sent out to investigate. They split and start knocking on every door, only to find drunk people everywhere. Suddenly Pia hears Boss asking for help on the radio, so she rushes to the other corridor and discovers a bloody handprint on a doorframe. Boss doesn't answer the radio anymore, so Pia enters the room. Growling can be heard and Pia is seen fighting something in the darkness. After some struggle, she manages to free herself and grabs the fire axe to kill her attacker. On Pia's way out, Edith sees the blood and rushes to the room to check which vampire was killed. In her room, Maddie hears knocking and opens the door for her best friend, who comes inside with a lost look on her face. Lo and Albine try to tell the receptionist that the crazy people are vampires, but Kaye tells them to go back to their parents. In the bar, the wounded woman dies and her friend tries to give her CPR. However, the woman wakes up as a vampire and bites her. Goran and another man pull her back and search for something to tie her up. Pia begins patrolling the corridors and sends the confused guests to their rooms. She comes across Dan, who pretends to be normal. Pia notices his bite mark is gone, but leaves when she hears people screaming. Behind Dan, Walter is eating the receptionist. When he's done, he guides Dan through the ship and teaches him how to control the mindless vampires, making them follow them. In another corridor, Lo and Albine are shocked to see 4 vampires feeding on 2 bodies. Lo starts filming with her phone, but the vampires hear them, so the kids have to run away. A chase ensues as more and more vampires appear around the ship. The kids bump into Martin and tell him to run too. He's only convinced when he sees a vampire covered in blood coming after them. No matter what corridor they take, they keep finding vampires, so they make their way to the spa. The clerk is locking the door, but she decides to open it to let the family pass and closes it again before the vampires can follow. Meanwhile, Sarah is looking for her family and also keeps finding vampires in the corridors. She makes her chair go as fast as possible until she makes it to her room, but her family isn't there. When another vampire appears in front of her, she starts driving the chair in reverse to try to escape. Dan and Walter continue to wander around the ship, taking all the vampires with them. In the bar, the barman notices the lack of noise and looks outside to confirm that the creatures are gone. Marianne Chaos takes over the room and Pia defends herself against a vampire, but Dan stops him because Pia is his. She isn't strong enough to stop him when Dan tackles her and he proceeds to suck her blood. Suddenly Edith starts hitting Dan with a fire extinguisher, pushing him out of the room while telling him to stay away from her son. She blames him for putting ideas in Walter's head, but Dan explains Walter planned it all and it was Edith who pushed him into this. Edith keeps hitting him but pauses when she hears the door, so Dan takes the chance to tackle her. When he's about to kill her, Walter stops him and tells him to leave. Then Edith and Walter argue over the rules and how vampires should behave. Walter is angry because his mother condemned him to this life and announced that he hates her before running away. On the deck, people are desperately getting life jackets and trying to board the lifeboats. Albine arrives with his family, but he doesn't want to go because he wants to find his mother. Gora sees all this from the window, so he and Marianne decide to try to get on the boats too. After they leave, Vince finally arrives at his room but he can't get inside. After the vampires leave the staff room, the survivors help Pia up. She isn't feeling well, so she asks Kaye to go to the control room with Auntie. Before they leave, she gives Kaye the wedding ring she's been protecting. Once they're gone, Pia realizes the smell of blood is calling her. She grabs her handcuffs and straps herself to a railing as she feels the transformation coming. As the guys take the stairs, Auntie feels a little dizzy. They still keep moving and reach the control room, only to notice that everything inside has been destroyed. Suddenly the captain pounds on the window, revealing he's a vampire too. Obviously they can't enter this room, so they should stop the engine instead. However, the engine is in the lowest deck, and getting there would be impossible to survive. At that moment Kaye and Auntie see the crowd lowering the lifeboat and run to try to stop them, but it's too late. Because of the ship's speed, the boat sinks into the ocean as soon as it touches the water. Only a few survivors were left behind, quickly turning creepy as he says he must have someone to share eternal life with. When he says he loves her, Nadia responds that she'd rather meet her end than be with him. She tries to run away but Dan catches her and breaks her neck. Afterward Dan grabs the microphone and sings. When Walter finds him, Dan snaps, calling him pathetic for not finishing his mother. Dan announces the vampires only need one leader and takes the captain's hat back before Walter runs away in fear. In the kitchen, Albine's group looks for knives and other things they can use as weapons. Goran takes the chance to admit to Marianne that he spent time in prison, and that's where he met his friends. Lo shows everyone the picture of Edith and Albin explains that she started it all. While they discuss ideas, Ani hides a wound in his hand. Kaye sees a landline phone and tries to call his bedroom, but obviously nobody picks up. In the corridor, Vince feels helpless because he hears the phone ring. Then Albin calls his room and is surprised to hear his mother. He promises to rescue her, but Sarah tells him to leave without her. When Martin takes over the phone, Sarah hangs up. The group then realizes that Ani is missing and finds him in the neighboring room. He finally shows them his wound and tells them to leave without him, passing the MasterCard key to Kaye. After they're gone, Ani spits out a tooth. Refusing to become a monster, Ani goes to the deck and jumps into the ocean to self-delete. When the group reaches out, Albin leaves alone too, so Lo goes looking for him. Soon Pia reaches the reception and uses the broadcast system to tell survivors to go to the lifeboats. Dan interrupts her when he realizes she's a smart vampire, and Pia tells him about Edith's plan. She wants to work together to stop her, but Dan locks her up in a cell and says he hopes the cruise will burn. After promising to escape on a lifeboat, he turns off the sprinkler system. In the lower deck, Edith realizes Pia only pretended to agree with her. When she finds a survivor asking for help, she sedates him and cuts his body before dragging it through the ship. The smell of blood causes other vampires to follow her. In the corridor, Vince hears a noise and follows it to find Maddie hiding behind a cart. After hearing the announcement, they agree to go to the lifeboats together. They manage to hide in the elevator before Edith passes by, followed by the creatures. Nearby, Lo and Albin reunite before they see all the vampires walking together. Walter also comes out when he hears the noise and looks at the kids, but he ignores them and follows the horde. When Lo and Albin finally reach the family room, they find Sarah dead on the floor. Albin has a breakdown, and Lo fails to snap him out of it. At the same time, Goran and Marianne also split from the group to go looking for Goran's friends, but the rooms are empty. Thinking they won't survive, they admit their feelings for each other and end up getting naughty. In the garage, eating for him. While they run, Maddie accidentally cuts her foot. All the survivors who have been hiding in their rooms come out and panic takes over the corridors. Goran and Marianne run as well, dodging flames and creatures as they go. Unfortunately, a vampire gets close enough and Goran acts as a sacrifice so Marianne can escape. As smoke starts filling every corner, Kaye hears Pia's voice. He finds a radio on a body and she tells him that she's stuck, so Kaye rushes to the cells to help her. However, he freezes when he notices the bite mark on her neck. Pia explains they must kill all the vampires and she's the only one who can do it, so Kaye agrees to free her after all. Afterward they rush to the cameras to make an evacuation plan. Kaye gets distracted when he sees Vince on a pile of bodies, but Pia reminds him to concentrate. And a vampire, Pia shows up to stop him, so Dan takes Maddie hostage. Pia claims she doesn't care about humans anymore and Dan buys the lie, so he lets Maddie go and runs away. Kaye finishes putting the last survivors on the boats while Pia searches for Dan. In the reception, Dan attacks her and a vicious battle ensues. They exchange a few hits and Pia stabs him in the stomach with a knife, but this barely hurts him and the fight continues. Both vampires are very strong, but Dan manages to get the upper hand and captures Pia in a chokehold. When he's about to kill her, Kaye shows up and throws a weapon at Pia, which she uses to knock Dan down. Then she grabs his neck and breaks it to finally kill him. Afterward, Kaye and Pia run back to the deck where the boat is still waiting. However, Pia knows what she's become and tells Kaye to leave without her. Kaye refuses to abandon her and after lots of begging, she gets on the boat too. The final survivors leave and everyone cries in relief while the ship